Applying color to fabric is the name of the game for art quilters. Helen Parsons' paints are actually finely cut strips of fabric that she stitches with thread. And Valerie White showcases methods for transferring images using dispersed dyes. Today's episode will have you playing with what we art quilters love, mixed media. Today we're going to be learning about Impressionistic fabric painting with guest Helen Parsons. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
So these pieces that you do look like Impressionistic paintings from a distance, and you get up close and it's all fabric strips.
It's a great way to stash bust. It's a great way for me to use some of my favorite fabrics.
So when you start out, are you cutting up the little pieces of fabric?
I'm basically creating a painter's palette. So there's where the painting part comes in.
Okay.
So I'll create a palette out of tiny strips of fabric.
So is this the palette up here?
This is. Isn't it beautiful? We
It
get a chance to
is.
use all of my favorite fabrics, and these happen to be batiks.
So you started with a photo, and you think first about what colors are in the photo, and maybe you want to change them a little bit, or?
Yeah, I like the freedom of that. In this case, I've decided to change the horizon in this photograph. I know I really liked this area here and this dark rock, but then when we got to the horizon, it was really fogged over, and I thought I want to pick that out a little bit more. And so I used this one as an example of the piece here on the table.
Okay.
Where I picked out that horizon.
Beautiful. So are you going to show us how you cut your fabric?
I would love to.
Okay.
I would love to. I like batiks a lot because it has a really tight weave. It lends itself really well to this process.
So you don't get lots of shredding.
Sometimes you want that, and that's where special occasion fabrics would come in, or silks. But with batiks, you get a little bit more control, and it's a fun way to start with this technique. So let me put on a cutting glove here. Gotta use these.
If you're doing lots of slicing, it might be good to be safe, right?
That's right. So I'm making fabric ribbons out of this. So I like to keep it folded about like that. You can cut through a lot if you've got a nice sharp blade. And we'll cut 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch all the way through. And I'll cut a little bit here. And we'll just zip through a bit. Then you got all these fabrics cut. Then we just pull the ribbons apart and make a nice little pile that looks like spaghetti.
Pretty. And this one's nice with the little pops of black in it too.
Well, you know, you get a lot of mileage out of fabrics that have a lot of different colors in it. This is a good example of all the different colors you can get out. You can imagine all the different things that you could do.
Because in naturescapes, there's so much subtle variations in color, so you're getting at that.
Absolutely, and sometimes you want fabrics that don't have quite as much going on. So it really makes you look at your fabrics a little bit differently when you're using them in the context of knowing that you're going to be cutting them up into thin strips.
And you get a better sense of that once they're shredded like this. Once you've got the strips, to be able to see it, because they may look different than...
Absolutely. Sometimes this looks kind of peachy to me, but in this way it looks more beige. So it can really look different once it's cut up.
Okay.
So once we've got a bunch of these piles cut, and we've built our palette with all the colors that we think we might need, we might go back in and edit and take some out or put some more back in. But it's time to build the piece.
Okay. So now we're going to build the composition.
We are. And I'm going to go back to my original photograph just to use as an example, but it's not the rule. So the first thing I do is draw on this horizon line. I like to start on a piece of paper so I can keep changing it until I get to where I want it to be. When it's done being drawn out, I know the areas that I want to pick out for clouds. Then it's time for me to draw it onto water-soluble stabilizer. So I've got a nice big sheet here. And I just take a marker and just trace out that area. One of the things I want to make sure to do is to leave a perimeter, and I've drawn a fine line on here to make sure that I have a line dedicated to turn in. So I would draw that all the way around, and then I would trace all of these areas loosely. It doesn't have to be perfect. This is just an idea. It's impressionistic, remember?
Right.
Right. So we'll go through and trace all these areas out. When we're done tracing them out, then it's time to start building the piece with the palette.
Okay.